We continue now at the top of Daf Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 3b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said not only by motive and mixas do we say that there's a shvua, meaning in a situation where a person has a partial admission to what is being claimed, but also in a situation where Eidim testify on part of what is being claimed. Let's say their claim against him is 100, and Eidim say that he owes 50. Also in that case, we say that the person has to take a shvua. And the Gemara in the previous Amud said, now why would we think that maybe it's only by admission? The reason is because in general, a person is not so brazen to deny everything, and that's why he's not denying everything. And really he wants to admit to everything. And the reason why he's not admitting to everything is what he's doing is he's trying to delay things. He thinks to himself, when I have money, then I'll pay the rest. So that's why a person in general is motive and mixas. He doesn't want to deny the entire thing because he's not so brazen. And really he would like to admit to the entire thing, but he doesn't have the money. He's trying to delay a little bit. And that's why, that's why the Torah says, Rami Shvua that he should take a Shvua, in order that he'll actually admit to everything. This is what I would have thought. But let's say witnesses testify in part of it, where we don't have all of this logic. So I would say no. I would say there's no Shvua. Kamash Malon. So that's what it's teaching us. It's teaching us that there's a Shvua by Hadoas Eidim as well. Kamash Malon Kal V'chomer. That's what the Kal V'chomer is teaching us. And so the Gemara now says, Umay Kal V'chomer. Now what is the Kal V'chomer? Rashi on the previous Amud already mentioned that the Gemara here would tell us what the Kal V'chomer is. The Kal V'chomer is as follows. Uma piv shein mechayvo mamon mechayvo shvua. If when it comes to admission, which is not mechayev him to pay, but it is mechayev him to take an oath. So Eidim, when it comes to witnesses, shemechayven oso mamon, which are mechayev him to pay money, eino din shemechayven oso shvua. Isn't it true that the Eidim should be mechayev him to take an oath? But the Gemara says, what does that mean? Upiv ein mechayvo mamon. If a person admits that's not mechayev him money, that's not true. V'hodas baldin kamei Eidim dami. The halach is that if the baldin admits, it's like 100 witnesses. If you admit that you owe money, you have to pay the money. And the Gemara says to that, no, what we mean is as follows. My mammon, what do we mean when we say that admission does not cause you to pay mammon? We're talking about knas. We're talking about a fine. When you admit to something that's a fine, the halach is you don't have to pay for it. As the Gemara explains, when it comes to admission, where admission does not cause a person to be chayev a knas, a fine, but that does obligate the person to take a shvua, so witnesses which could be mechayev a person to pay a fine, certainly it's mechayev that person to take a shvua. But the Gemara continues, Ma'alapiv shekain mechayvo carbon. You can refute this kal v'chomer because it's only admission that can be mechayv a person to bring a carbon, talking about admitting to a monetary claim that he had previously denied and taken a false shvua about. Tomer be'edim shein mechayv also carbon. That's not true. When you have witnesses come in such a case, there you don't have to bring a carbon, so maybe the kal v'chomer is no good. And the Gemara says to that, Halo Kasha, that's not difficult. Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Meir, Svirale. Rabbi Chia holds like Rabbi Meir. The teaching on the previous Amud was from Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia holds like Rabbi Meir. Damar Eidim mechayven so carbon mikal v'chomer. Rabbi Meir says that Eidim could be mechayv the person to bring a carbon from a kal v'chomer. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Amru lo shnayim achalta chaylev. Let's say two people say to him, you ate chaylev. V'hu Amr lo achalta. He says, I didn't eat chaylev. Rabbi Meir mechayev v'chachamim pochim. Rabbi Meir says he's chayev, and the chachamim say potter, meaning to say Rabbi Meir says he's chayiv to bring a carbon in that case. Amar Rabbi Meir says, if two witnesses are able to bring a person that he gets the death penalty, lo yeviyu lidei carbon hakal, certainly they should be able to be machayiv him a carbon. Amru lo, they said back to him, ma'im yirtza lomar mezid hayisi potter, but it doesn't make sense because had he said that he did it on purpose, he would have been potter from a carbon. You only bring a carbon if you did it by mistake, and so therefore, according to Rabbi Meir, you see that Eidim could be mechayev a carbon. But the Gemara says still, but still we can refute the kal v'chomer, because what is true by admission, shekein mechayev asham, that's even mechayev a person that he brings a carbon asham. But the Gemara says to that, asham hainu carbon, asham is in the same category as carbon, you can't use that as a refutation. And so the Gemara instead says, well, what can we say about admission? Shekein mechayev chomesh, you have to pay a fifth. Again, we said that if a person falsely denies a claim and takes a false shvua, he then admits, so then he brings a carbon, he also has to pay a fifth. So therefore, that's only true by admission, and it's not true by Eidim, so that should be a refutation of the kal v'chomer. And the Gemara says, Halo Kasha, that's not a Kasha either. Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Meir, Svirle, because Rabbi Chia holds like Rabbi Meir, Ki hechi de mechayev le carbon mikal v'chomer. Just like Rabbi Meir says, a person is chayev to bring a carbon if Eidim testify. That's from a kal v'chomer. Mechayev le chomesh mikal v'chomer. He would say the same thing by the fifth. By the 1/5 payment also, if Eidim come, even if it's not an admission, he has to pay that fifth. But the Gemara continues, but what's unique about admission is that there's no concept of contradicting the admission or falsifying the admission. Tomar be'edim, whereas we say by edim sheyeshnan b'achashu v'azama, there's a concept of contradicting witnesses with other witnesses or falsifying witnesses with other witnesses, and so therefore again, you can't make the kal v'chomer. Maybe only by modim mixas we say there's a shvua, but not necessarily if there's edim mixas. And so the Gemara instead says, Ela asya mi'ed echad. Rather, we learn this halacha out that if two witnesses testify partially to part of what is being claimed that he makes a shvua, we learn that out from eid echad. Because umay eid echad shein mechayev u'mammon. Let's say one aid testifies against somebody in a monetary case. The person doesn't have to pay money because of the testimony of one aid, but still mechayev shvua. But it is able to obligate him to bring a shvua. So eidim. So when it comes to two witnesses, shemechayev and also mammon, two witnesses are able to obligate the person to pay money. Eino din shemechayev and also shvua. Shouldn't be the halacha that they can be mechayev him to take an oath. But the Gemara says that's also not a good kal v'chomer. Mala eid echad shekein al mashu meid hu nishba. When it comes to eid echad, so it's whatever the one witness is testifying about. Let's say the one witness says you owe a certain amount of money, so then you have to swear about that particular amount of money. That's true by eid echad. When it comes to the two witnesses are saying you're chayav 50 and you're taking a shvua on the other 50. So you can't learn out from eid echad. And we will take a look at Rashi. Again, the person really wants to admit to everything. Now maybe you'll say, well, if we're already suspecting him about lying about the money, so why should we trust him to take a shvua anyway? So we shouldn't even be able to give him a shvua. It's not really true, even in this situation where he's admitting partially and falsely denying part of it. That doesn't make him suspect on stealing. Because really, he really wants to admit everything. He just can't pay right now. He figures to delay. When he gets money, he'll pay. And then the Gemara said, when it comes to Edom, you can't say this whole logic, because here he actually did deny everything. We should say, since he's lying in terms of money, because Edom came and said, in fact, he's chayav part of it, so maybe he shouldn't be able to take a shvua. That's why you wouldn't apply the logic. So instead we say, no, there's a kal v'chomer, just like we say by admission, that we say there's a shvua, so too we say by Edom there's a shvua. Piv she'eno mechayev u'mammon behoda. Also, at first the kal v'chomer is that admission is not mechayev him money when he admits. That doesn't make sense initially. Ulakam mefarshla, the Gemara will explain that later on. Mechayev shvua al he has to take a shvua on the other part, the part that he does not admit to. So Edom shemechayev also mammon b'masha yidu. Edom which are mechayev him money, and Odin shechayev shvua al ashar. Certainly he should take a shvua on the rest. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? Hodas baldin kameya Edom. Admission is mechayev him money. That's what we say. Hodas baldin. If a baldin admits, it's like 100 witnesses. Brisa he b'tosefta Bava Metzia parakrisha. That's a brisa in the tosefta Bava Metzia. So then the Gemara revised it to piveinu mechayev knas, that his admission is not able to be mechayev him to pay a fine. The alfina mikroy we learn out from Sukkim demode b'knas potter. If you admit by a fine, you're potter. Asher yarshian Elohim pradlam arshiyas atzman. We learned that out from the pasuk of Asher yarshian. It's only if the court finds him to be guilty, but not if he makes himself guilty by admitting. Then the Gemara said, Piv mechayev carbon, that by admission that can be mechayev a person a carbon. As it's written, ve'esvada shechat ve'evi. It says that through the admission he then brings the carbon. Edom ein mechayev also carbon. Witnesses initially, the Gemara says, witnesses are not mechayev a carbon. In machishin also, if they contradict him, hoda elav. It says that it makes it known, meaning he makes it known. V'lo shiodu acherim, not that other people make it known. And so then the Gemara said that there is the opinion of Rabbi Meir that two people can be mechayev a carbon. Amru lo shnayim achalta chaylev. Let's say two people say that you ate chaylev. So in that situation, he says, I didn't eat the chaylev. Shogeg, they say he ate it b'shogeg. V'u amar lo achalti. He says, I didn't eat it potter. So it's machlokas tanoim. So again, Rabbi Meir says chayev, the chacham say potter. So potter sheyachol omer meizer yisi. The reason to say potter is because he could have said that I did it on purpose. V'yifter min a carbon. He would have been potter from a carbon. You only bring a carbon by mistake. So therefore, after Shamar lo achalti potter, so when he says I didn't eat also, he's also potter. The malo l'shakar, what's his reason? Why should he need to lie? That's the reason to say potter. And then the Gemara said, Chomesh v'yasham, you have a unique halacha of a fifth and bringing a carbon asham. Im nishba v'kafar mammon. Again, this is talking about a case where you take a false oath, you deny money, v'hoda, then he admits, ksivo michol asher yishav alav l'sheker. There's a payment of a fifth and a carbon asham. But then the Gemara said it's still not a kal v'chomer, because eino ba'achashu v'azama, when it comes to admission, there is no concept of contradiction, there's no concept of falsification. As Rashi explains, let's say he admits that he owes a money, and Edom come and contradict. They say you're not chayiv. Lo klum, you're not chayiv anything to him. Ain't no nifter b'kach. He's not patur then. Because the admission's like 100 Edom and actually beats the witnesses that are contradicting him. But regular witnesses, you can have a concept of contradicting them or falsifying them. If two other witnesses would come and contradict the first two or falsify the first two, then you're not going to pay based on the first witnesses. And then the Gemara finally said we can learn from Eid Echad, because Mechayiv o Shvua and Eid Echad can be Mechayiv a person a Shvua. The case is Tanu Chaveru Manali Biyadcha. A person claims you owe me 100. V'om Rein Lach Biyadi Klum. He says I don't owe you anything. Ve'Eid Echad Mido Shu Chayiv Lo. And one witness says he is Chayiv. Harezen Nishba Lahachesh Eid. The halacha actually is he has to take a Shvua to say that the Eid is wrong. T'chsiv, as it's written, Lo Yakom Eid Echad Bish V'Gomer L'Chalavon L'Chachatos Hu Deino Kam Aval Shvua Kam. We learn from the pasuk that Eid Echad isn't good for anything except for a Shvua. That is effective from an Eid Echad. An Eid Echad can be Mechayiv a Shvua. But then the Gemara said, Mal Eid Echad, meaning you can't learn from Eid Echad, because Kolomar Hechi Alaf the Shvua D'Shnayim, Mishvua Eid Echad, you can't learn the oath by two witnesses from an oath by one witness, because it's a different kind of oath. By the oath by one witness, you're taking a Shvua on what the Eid testified. Mal Eid Echad Shekain Al Mashohaid Meid Hu Nishbal Achisho. That which the Eid Echad said, that's what you're taking a Shvua to contradict that Eid Echad, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Dalid Amid Aleph.